On Wednesday, several senators appeared to have backed out of their threat to override President Muhammadu Buhari's veto of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. According to a news report in the Nation newspaper, Nigeria, the senators were said to have had a rethink following intense lobbying by 6 APC governors, led by Governor Buni of Yobe State on Tuesday night. They were also said to have been persuaded by Senator Gabriel Suswam, who during a closed-door meeting with the Senate President reminded his colleagues that overriding a presidential veto was easier said than done. Suswam was reported to have informed the senators that the National Assembly can only overturn the veto on the electoral bill by first adhering to the same legislative procedures required for its passage. This means that the bill must go through the first, second, and third reading before a vote can be held to override the president. To discuss the latest turn of events in the Senate and enlighten us on the procedures both houses of the National Assembly must follow to override a presidential veto, we are now being joined by Senator Ayo Arise. Senator Arise represented Ekiti North Senatorial District in the National Assembly between 2007 and 2011. We mentioned 2009 earlier, that's wrong. He was there 2007 to 2011, and he was the former chairman of the Senate Committee on Privatization. Good morning, Senator Arise, and welcome to the morning show. Well, Senator Arise, you represented Ekiti North Senatorial District in the National Assembly. But quickly, I was trying to edit myself earlier on. I said you were there 2007, 2009, and then I said, well, it should have been 4 years. But somebody sent me a text message and said, no, you were actually in the Senate between 2007 and 2009, and there was a Court of Appeal judgment which reduced your tenure to 2 years. Is that correct? Just to make sure that we have the facts right.
That is not correct. What? I had the re-election, I won overwhelmingly, came back, I finished my 4 years. I left the Senate in 2011. So you are correct. For 2007 to 2011. Okay. I was not truncated. There was a re-election which I won, and I completed my term in 2011.
Okay, we just try to make sure that we get the facts right. But the reason you are here is to comment on what is going on in the National Assembly at the moment over the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. What do you make of it? The various strands we've been discussing since morning.
Well, thank you very much. You've had quite a lot of good contributions. And my take on this is that the way to go will be to find a way around that particular clause, because the National Assembly will not override, will not be able to override the president. They will not have the votes. I mean, you can see what has happened in the last 2 days. Of course, the governors will move in. They have quite a substantial influence on the senators and the House of Rep members. So if that is the way they want to go, that is what will prevail at the end of the day. And the best thing for Nigeria at this point is for us to find a way of redrafting that particular section. And I would suggest, yes, for now, let's leave the options there for direct primaries and for indirect primaries, so the party can make a choice down the road. Neither of the two systems, neither is perfect. But we see more the overwhelming influence of the state chief executives in terms of imposition of candidates is much easier with the delegate system, which not only do they control, because they invariably control the party structure as the CEO. And so the question of saying this is where we want you to vote is much easier than it is in the direct primaries. The direct primaries has its own challenges as well, but I would imagine that for the people to have their voice. Why I'm saying this is that even in the direct primaries, the influence of money plays a significant role. And you see people on the queues trying to vote. Somebody will just go there and buy them over. So the structure of the lines will change. Either way, we are just striving to ensure that we get something that is good for Nigerians, as something that is a semblance of free and fair election, and having a primary that is representative of the choice of the people. The indirect primaries is certainly the worst culprit in terms of having a free and fair election. It is the will of the chief executives that determines where the people or the outcome of those elections will be. And that's the more reason why the senators, those who want to come back, would choose very carefully how they want to vote on this matter. And that is why at the end of the day, if they bring that to the floor to override this veto, it will fail. There is no way you will get the people. It's either the chamber will be empty, or you see that people don't have the spine to get up and say, no, this must be the way. So they are looking at the best way to manage a very bad situation. And I would imagine that if they come back, they should just make an amendment to that particular clause and send it back to Mr. President to sign. Because there are so many valuable clauses that would ensure that we move towards a freer and fairer electoral process. And I think this is what I would advocate. The issue of whether they will come back and override the president, that will never happen. Not in this country of today. So we have to continue to get one thing at a time and move forward, to see how we can be taking it one day at a time, one policy at a time. If this is not popular now, in the future, it might be possible. It might be possible once the system begins to cleanse up by itself, and we are getting a better electoral system. That is my take on this morning.
But what happens then if the National Assembly does get together and do as you have suggested, as a coalition of political parties has suggested, and amend that one offending clause that President Buhari pointed out, and then they now present another bill to the president, and the president withholds his assent again, making the 5th time, because he's done it 4 times now. And I ask this question because some of the reasons that he cited are rather flimsy. I think only 1 or 2 is convincing out of all the reasons. For example, he was talking about upholding political parties' constitution when political parties constantly amend their constitution. Even the nation's grand norm is not set in stone. Constitutions are made to be amended. And how can an enactment of the National Assembly be made to tiptoe around the constitution of political parties? That is beyond contemptible as a reason. But it does go to show or indicate his state of mind when it comes to electoral reform. If the National Assembly does remove that clause about direct primaries and the president doesn't play ball, what then?
Well, again, I would imagine that Mr. President is listening to other Nigerians apart from his advisors. But even though he still has to work with whatever advice is given by the professionals he has surrounded himself with, they would advise him. But on the issue that you raised, in terms of if he now withhold this assent again, we would begin to talk and let the president understand that the whole nation is watching. We started this electoral process when people were using calendars and all manner of stuff to do registration. They have fictitious registers. Then under previous governments, they moved gradually to electronic register. Gradually, they moved, and we have continued to see some improvements. So, and I know this is a very big one for the APC. There must be a determination to leave a good legacy for this country, that we can say this is a product that that our president has delivered to us. It's not a question of whether we would, people are comparing. We are looking at what is going on. I'm a member of APC. And I came here to say Mr. President will sign because I was reading his antecedents and I was reading him as an individual. But when you have a number of governors who control the grassroots, more or less, they are the people closer to the grassroots, and they are saying this is what we want. It's difficult for the president not to listen to them. And it's not every person in society that will be able to walk into House of Villa and say, I want to discuss this with Mr. President. These are the people he sees as at when they want to see him. So it's not a question that is left to the president alone. The people should begin to sing songs to the ears of their respective governors, not only the National Assembly members, because National Assembly members, right now, they are even at the mercy of the governors. Because if you do anything contrary to what your governor wants, now you are looking for a ticket. They just yank you out and say, okay, you are no longer going back. They put another person there. It's about self-preservation. As long as the politics is based on that, we'll continue to have this kind of problem. So for us, if we start with, okay, let's see those who will be doing direct primaries, let's see those who will be doing indirect. And the electorate will be waiting because they know what they want. At that point, you have the opportunity of saying, this is what is going to happen. This is not what will happen. So for us, we should be looking at it that this is not really about Mr. President signing or not signing. He signs based on advice that is given and based on counsel that he gets from those people that represent the states, and those are the governors. So any way you look at it, and even the governors too, they are looking at themselves. Some are looking at their legacy, the preservation of it. Some are looking at it that, okay, what is going to happen? But at the end of the day, the electorate will still decide. As long as they continue to make money, the primary motive for voting, I don't see how we can make any significant progress, as things are.
Senator Arise, isn't it shocking when you said that the National Assembly cannot veto the president on this, and you say it can never happen? And my jaw dropped because I asked, what's the essence of democracy then? Isn't it a joke we're practicing here? If there's supposed to be separation of powers according to the Constitution, the National Assembly is supposed to be able to stand on its own, the legislative part and the executive part on their own, and the fact that they can be at variance in issues of national discourse. So what are we practicing? What do we have? What do we have? Isn't it not just time for them to go home and don't come back again?
Let me put it this way. The National Assembly, they're still performing their roles of making laws. Now, but in every presidential system, when the presidency or the president is at loggerheads with the National Assembly, the president introduces a veto. And the Constitution says you require 2/3 majority of both houses. And we have 109 senators. Even if they're able to sign the 75, then look at the other part, the other house. Where would they get 2/3 majority in the other house? It is if a governor, for example, we look at, if you look at how skewed the population of the House of Reps, you will understand the fact that it's not a place that is designed for anything that would kind of disrupt the idea and the thinking and the wish of the president. So that's why I say that. And maybe the word never is a little bit too strong. There is nothing that can never happen. But at this current dispensation, between now and the next election, that the current set of National Assembly members will be able to override and use a veto to overturn the will and the wish of the president. I don't see it happening. And that's the practicality that is on the ground. But the need for the National Assembly can still not be overemphasized. There are some people or some areas where they are very efficient, but there are some areas that once it gets to this political stuff, it's very difficult for them to be effective. As long as everyone is looking for an opportunity to come back. And not only are they looking for an opportunity to come back, they are looking at an opportunity to be in the good book of the executive as well. You know, so somehow, it's not we're not practicing it the best way, but you can still look at it that even in the US, what is happening now, we have only one senator in the Senate that is insisting that he will not go with the president in the Democratic Party. And that is 1 out of 50. So problems like this do have only one.
He has a deciding
and if
vote.
You are looking for
he has a deciding vote, and he's been able to hold everybody ransom. So when will our National Assembly be that way? When will our National Assembly be that way in this country? Just one man has been able to hold everybody ransom, look the president in the face and disagree with him. And I look and say, that's the same America we copy this presidential system from.
Yes, you can say that because it's 50-50 and the election, the outcome of the last election was very close. So they both have 50-50. In our current National Assembly, the APC has the majority. They are not tied at all. If they were tied, then that is when one person can stand up and say, you can't vote this thing, you can't vote this thing in and say, I'm standing against it. Then it will count, because that is when you are counting one vote at a time. Most of the voting that we do here is already rigged, because it's those in support say aye, those against nay. That is 90% of our voting system. And that is not the way to make people accountable to their constituencies. So if you go to the National Assembly and everybody says aye, you say no, you don't even know how to measure it. You look at the noise level. And how can you now take a senator and say, oh, you voted yes the other day? Where did the man stand up to say I voted yes or no? So we have not gotten it to the level that it should be. We must begin to use one man, one vote. To stand up, you write what you are voting for, your reasons for it. And people will know that when you are representing the National Assembly, you voted for the people, for the interests of the people, not just for the crowd. So if we begin to compare the two systems, one has matured so much that it's a no-brainer for us to start saying that the gap is almost unbridgeable for now. And our character as people, again, we need to look at it. Then part of it to our culture. So we must understand that we respect our elders so much. I mean, I cannot imagine myself looking at the president out and now shaking him and say, hey, Buhari, hi. It's not possible. But that is possible in their culture. So we do respect our elders and we respect people in power as well. But it's not the same. So when we are comparing these things, we want to get to that level, but we must build it by building blocks one step at a time. So I think it's not about they are going home. It's about looking at how to continue to improve on the system. This is the 9th Assembly. And if you count it from when America started, since the 1700s to this time, you will know that we have not started yet. So we'll continue. The press is doing very wonderfully. You are performing excellently. We are looking for improvement, and we'll continue to get it gradually and step by step.
Well, Senator Arise, we'll need to take a short break. After that break, we'll come back to you. Please stay with us, and the conversation will continue. We'll be right back. This is still the Arise News Channel. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Our guest is still Senator Ayo Arise. Senator Arise represented Ekiti North Senatorial District in the National Assembly between 2007 and 2011 and is the former chairman of the Senate Committee on Privatization. Senator Arise, thank you for staying with us. Two quick things that we have already discussed this morning before you joined us. One, the role of the governors. How powerful are the governors? In the light of this general talk about the separation of powers, we've now been told that the governors have moved in and they are controlling the lawmakers. Of what use is a legislative system that is tied to the apron strings of manipulative governors? Is that standard practice in what you can call Nigerian democracy? Second, the senators are now saying, oh, they will go and consult their constituents. Who are these constituents? Who sees these lawmakers in their constituencies until the next election? Do you think that that will really happen and that, that is the way it goes in Nigeria? Or we're just being taken for a ride by lawmakers trying to be clever by half?
Well, thank you very much. We know in this executive or this presidential system of government, the governors, they call all the shots, just put it that way. It's in very unusual cases that you see a National Assembly member getting to be able to challenge the chief executive, that's the governor, successfully. It's in very unusual cases. The elections in the US for senators, for most of the states, is statewide. It's just like the same election that the governor has. So it gives them a lot of power and leverage. And they can stand up and say, when a senator comes to town, in the US, you will know that, yes, this is power, this is authority speaking. But gradually, the power and the allure of that office and the significance of that office has been whittled down by the overbearing powers of the governors in the states. Because now we have 3 senators per state. How can you compare 3 senators? It's so easy for the governor to use a divide and rule to ensure that it constantly gets the majority from them. As big as America, it's only 2 senators per state. So you do your statewide election, and you're able to stand up to the governor on issues that concerns your people. But whatever they say they want is what you are going there, not what the governor wants. But here, if a senator does not do the bidding of his governor, then one or 2 things. He's either ready to go or he has acquired so much money to fight the state because it's the state money versus the private pocket. And that's what is the problem that we have. And we talk of corruption people, corruption, ICPC, FCC. How effective are they? So the issue is you don't even ask a question of, all this money you are spending, where is it coming from? So the individual is at a loss from day one. You can't challenge your chief executive successfully in most cases because they'll just say, this is the person they want there. And that's it. You just go and sit at your house, or you continue to make noise till the next kingdom come. You go to the court, they have money to hire the best lawyers, and of course, they have more influence, they have more access, even to the judges. So what are we talking about here? It's not contesting with the governors. It's not an issue. They have been given so much power by the kind of constitution that we run. So much so that even the state legislators, they are just appendages. They are not doing anything. How many of them will go and say, oh, the governor is doing this, they want to override what he's saying, or this is the way they want to go? It's not, we are not practicing it the most ideal way it should go, but we're practicing it for survival. That is what is on the ground. If the state assemblies cannot, even when you want to change something at the National Assembly, and the governor doesn't have interest, he will tell his state assembly not to vote for it. And if you don't get the 2/3 majority in all the states, then that particular constitutional amendment will go to the dustbin as well. So these are things that we need to begin to put people that are a little bit self-sufficient, that are sufficiently educated, and they know the reason why and the purpose why they're in the state assemblies, or even in the National Assembly. The moment we're able to get, and people are able to look at the powers that they have under the Constitution, then we can begin to see some improvements in the way things happen. But as it is, the way it is structured, it's a survivor or the fittest. It's either you want to survive and stay there, or even if you are not careful, there can be a recall. Although I don't think that's ever been done successfully in Nigeria. But it's not impossible. Well, it depends Senator, on the kind of field. Yes. As
we begin to round up, I have two questions for you. You had the last time you were on this show, I believe, you were talking about how you regretted the fact that the Senate voted the way they did with regards to electronic transmission of results. And the Senate was forced to reverse themselves because of the public outcry, pressure from civil society organizations. Do you think that the voices of the people will be heard, those constituents that Senator Lawan referred to? That's my first question. My second question, I want your comment on President Buhari as a Democrat. Let's talk about his democratic credentials, because this is the same precedent. Earlier this year, you'll recall that the governors were up in arms against the president over his executive order trying to establish financial autonomy for the legislature and the judiciary. And now, come the end of this same year, he's failing to curtail the powers of the governors with regard to the influence that you just described over the National Assembly.
Well, thank you very much. In terms of whether the voice of the people, yes, you guys did a yeoman's job the last time. And good enough, the Senate reversed itself on the issue of electronic voting. But we are still at the same, still at the same level now, because I believe this electronic voting and this same clause that is causing ripples right now, they are tied together in the same amendment. So that is why I started by saying, let us redraft that or remove it so we can get our electronic voting law enacted. Now, the voice of the people can't. But the issue of going back to go and talk to the people on this veto, I don't think is an exercise that will yield any fruitful result. Because if you go to the state, you are going to talk to your governor, and the position is already known. They do not want to give away that power to exercise authority on who represents the state in so many of these offices. You can only see, you can only see few governors that will say, okay, hey, what does it matter? As long as the person is competent. But many are looking at how to put people in place who will be loyal to them, or will be somebody that if they say, oh, they want this in the National Assembly, he's all for it. And that will continue. So I don't think the issue of talking to the constituents for a decision like this is just a question of buying time. It's a very difficult situation for them, to work on. Maybe the opposition might be very eager. They might be more energetic in terms of overriding the president. but not so for the party members. Many will tread very cautiously. And I think we have to thank the National Assembly that they took a reversal and the heat was too much. But on this one, they'll be looking at their own individual survivor as well. They'll say, okay, if I vote this way, would my governor allow me a ticket? Or will he not even work against me? Even if he gets a ticket, it's not a guarantee. So we have to look, the two situations are a little bit different. But we'll continue to talk. And you continue to sensitize the public. If that can happen, and they can change their mind and override the veto, but I think the option of talking to Mr. President and the other members of the team and the party, that let us rearrange or redraft this particular clause and give the parties the option to say, you can do this, or it's either direct or indirect. If they have that decision, it's okay. I think nothing is cast in gold or concrete like that. So if they give that option, if the president does not sign, they will now know this, this goes beyond comprehension. But I think he wants to leave a good legacy for Nigerians, and he wants to leave a good legacy. When he was coming in, of course, we all loved Buhari for his being a straightforward person, not a corrupt person. At least nobody could have accused him of that, or nobody is even accusing him of that, even as the president. But it needs to leave a good legacy to move this electoral process forward for the interests of Nigerians.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Ayo Arise, for joining us this morning on The Morning Show.